And we are live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of My Kind of Theory. This is a podcast, a series, a conversation that we are doing in conjunction with Kind Theory to help really raise awareness around the issues and the barriers and the societal attitudes around neurodiversity. So today is a really special episode because we are joined by the founder of Kind Theory. So I am going to pass over to Samar firstly to let her introduce herself.
That's the hardest part, Jamie. But hi, everyone. I'm Summer, and I'm the founder of Kind Theory. I founded this organization together with some amazing founding members, one of whom is here today, Morenike, and I'm really excited that she was able to make it today because she is amazing. But back to myself, I'm just a humble neurodivergent person, trying to make this world more accepting of all of us here. Um, I kind of started noticing that the language patterns and uh, how the systems are designed in our world kind of dehumanizes a lot of us neurodivergent people. And if we don't stand up for ourselves, then who will? So that's what kind theory is all about.
I love that there. And yes, we have another one of the founders on the call with us today. And I am going to apologize now because before we went live, I was trying to make sure I didn't butcher the pronunciation of your name. So Morenike is on the call with us. And if I butchered that, please tell me off and I will do better. But over to yourself and to introduce.
I am never going to tell you off because I have answered to every approximation on anything that you can imagine throughout my life, and yours wasn't too bad. So hello everyone. This is Morenike. I'm so glad to be here with my two awesome neurodivergent colleagues and siblings on My Kind of Theory today. And I am one of the board members of Kind Theory. I was reached out to some years ago when the organization was newly starting to provide input and insight on the work of this really amazing nonprofit organization. And so I know that in case you're not familiar with Kind Theory, I just want to share a little bit about the fact that one thing that's really unique about this organization is that we're here to do things that are practical. We want to make this world kind and accessible and accepting for those of us who are neurodivergent. We don't want to be just tolerated. We don't want to be fixed. We want systems to promote our strengths and support who we are and honor our differences. And we want to do that in the areas that impact our lives on a daily basis, the places we work, where people learn and, attend school, or what have you, in the organizations that impact our lives every day. And so we're really about like diversity, inclusivity, and just supporting one another and being real.
I love that. And like one of the things for me is as a neurodivergent, I struggle to find the support for myself, the support that kind of relates to me. Because a lot of time things are inaccessible, things don't really speak to me correctly, and then I leave feeling really confused. And what I think was missing was that approach of there's no one size fits all here. It's that leading with kindness. And I think that's one of the things that attracts me so much to Kind Theory, because it really is leading with kindness, leading with thought, but giving voice to those not telling us what we need. Samar, I wonder if I could bring you back in. So I wonder, obviously this month marks a very important milestone, which is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And I wanted today just to reflect on that there, because as we know, women are less likely to be diagnosed with autism, with ADHD, with neurodivergence. And I want to talk about your experiences of getting diagnosed. And I wonder if you want to start tomorrow, or am I throwing you in the frying pan?
Well, I'm on the spot a little bit, but I have lived experience of this, so I can try to kind of give in as much insight as possible. I think when we're talking about women, and specifically, we cannot ignore the cultural implications and the gender-based expectations that come with being a woman. And a lot of, women are kind of raised to meet those expectations, and sometimes those go against our neurodivergence. And so the reason why most of us have been undiagnosed or, are having a late diagnosis is life is because we've learned how to mask. It's kind of like a stubborn attitude. If I can't do it, why let everybody know that I can't do it? Just kind of like, just be resilient and go through it like that. And so that kind of like pans into why we are having a late diagnosis per se. And one of the things that I'd like to talk about here is that even though things have improved now, and there is a wider criteria of diagnosis coming in. I don't like the term diagnosis. I'm sorry.
I agree.
I like
let's use recognition.
Yes, love that.
I mean, like I feel very, it's almost like I'm going against myself when I say diagnosis. But since this is the medical language out there, it's now I forgot about what I was talking about. But yeah, no, it's just like, there is a wider criteria of being able to identify those of us who are neurodivergent now. But still, if you go to the wider audience and you talk about autism and you talk about ADHD, there's this specific image that comes to the mind of, the wider audience. And most of those images are of white male kids, mostly boys. And imagine the surprise when a woman comes and says that she's neurodivergent. She's always met with responses like, "Are you? I don't think so." As if like it's completely out of question. How has she achieved so and so in life if she was neurodivergent in the first place? It's almost like people equate neurodivergence with inability to do something, and that kind of like that is still the thought process, unfortunately, that exists in many avenues of life. So that is something that we're working towards changing.
I love that there. And I love that you've just shared your own experiences with us, because obviously we are in communication a lot. And I think to stand on a platform and to share your experiences, everyone deserves to be applauded, but you're just right. It isn't getting diagnosed to be told who you are doesn't feel right. And it is the language. We aren't adopted enough into the social model of disability around that language. And I still think there's such a long way to go as a society for us to get to a place where we get that recognition. Not validation, because I don't want somebody to validate me. I just want somebody to recognize that difference is okay as opposed to not being okay or less than norm. Morenike, I want to come to yourself and I want to ask you about your experiences of getting your recognition.
Yes, but because I don't know how to follow directions, before I do that, I just want to say a few things about what you mentioned about, like this month and kind of like the importance, for women and, and so forth. And I wanted to mention that because there's a lot of disparities beyond that of recognition or diagnosis that I just want to point out, because I think people forget about that, or it's just not, thought about or known as much. So essentially so aside from being underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed, there's also just huge invisibility in our community. So if we look holistically at disability, primarily those who, women and girls who are disabled globally are 3 to 4 times more likely than their male counterparts to be disabled, and have only 1/3 of the literacy rate. And then yet at the same time, despite the fact that there are a number of circumstances that might prevent economic independence, so some of that is, due to services, some of that is due to ableism. Only approximately 15% of providers screen women with disabilities for intimate partner violence. And that's despite the fact that when you look at us, we're 4 times more likely to be to have experienced rape, 2.5 times more likely to have experienced sexual violence, 2 times more likely to have experienced physical violence, 3 times more likely to have experienced stalking, 2 times more likely to have experienced psychological abuse, and 2 times more likely to have our reproductive rights denied in terms of not being able to have autonomy about whether we, when or if we choose to conceive and, and carry a child and so forth. And we also have a 10% higher depressive disorder rate than those who are assigned male at birth. So there's this huge, like this big thing that we're not even seeing. And then there's all these things beneath the surface that are occurring. And then there's the fact, like you mentioned, of, and like Samar was saying as well, about the whole medical model, aspect of things, because this neurodivergence, it's a neurotype, it's a way of being, it's a disability as well, and disability doesn't mean inability, but often people look at the negative only, and and the fact that we have to that one needs to quote unquote have a diagnosis to receive assistance or services is really a broken and backward system. But for me, it's my story is probably similar to a lot of people like myself, who are, I'm an exennial. So like growing up, autism didn't look like me. You know what I mean? That's not, autism was perceived to look, like a particular way, and it missed me. And so I had a number of different diagnoses, but autism wasn't one of them. And so it wasn't until in my adolescent years, I obtained an ADHD diagnosis, but it was actually after I had my children. My 2 youngest children are autistic, and it was while their identification, the screening, and and so forth, and going through the diagnostic process is what kind of really uncovered me. And so, because I was just, I was really confused, and I would tell them, "This isn't autism. I do this. This is the reason for this. This is the reason for this." And I was really confused about what they meant. And the more I researched and looked into things, I was like, when I started to really look into the views and the words and the stories of neurodivergent people, I found myself. And so I essentially self-diagnosed during that process prior to later obtaining the formal diagnosis. And for me, it was very cathartic. I cried, but not sadness, joy, because I was like, this is what it is. I'm not this broken entity, this messed up person who just can't get it right. I have an understanding of what this is. It was just so illuminating for me.
If I could stand and applaud, I would, but my selfie lights would fall on top of me and it would not be good in camera. It's just honestly just incredible. And one thing that I kept in my mind when you were starting to speak was the trauma. That trauma doesn't go away. That past doesn't go away. And if we look at history around disability and neurodiversity, that history isn't so much history, more like current affairs, because you were talking there about violence against women, about having the right to their bodies and the right to choose. Well, a lot of women are forced to be sterilized because of disability in not so recent history. And I think it's so important that we acknowledge that, and the privilege in diagnosis, because, to be diagnosed, it is a privilege. A lot of people are having to go private here within the UK to try to get a referral. Takes, I think, 4 to 5 years and 7 years in some areas. And that's a whole chunk of your life. That's a whole chapter of your life you're waiting. And to get that recognition, it's validating, but it also feels like privilege. I felt very privileged when I got mine. Equally, mine was because of a friend. Somebody else was in the process, and I recognized it. I want to bring the conversation back to kind theory and how we are supporting individuals, the individuals that we're talking about, the individuals who don't have access to diagnosis, the individuals who are maybe in situations where they don't know what support is available. So I wonder if we can talk about what we at Kind Theory can be doing and what anyone who's going to be watching or is watching can do to support.
So, Morenike, do you want to take that, or can I just jump in?
You can jump in and I'll fill in any thoughts afterward.
Right. Okay. We're a very small team right now, Jamie. I'm going to be raw and real here. We're a small team, but we're small and mighty, and we do the best with what we have. We're working with a lot of autistic advocate, but because what we have noticed is that the resources and everything that exists out there right now are not mostly led by autistic people or developed by the lived experience of neurodivergent people. And so we're trying to change that, and we're trying to develop the resources that are developed um, in consideration, in fact, by the people who have the lived experience of the neurodivergence. And that's, we're trying to make those resources, every resource that we have is available free of cost to everyone who may or may not be identified yet, because there's a lot of people who are wondering, well, can I be neurodivergent or not? We don't want them not to have access to the resources. We don't want to be doing the same thing to them as the system is doing right now. So our resources are all free. We have these campaigns which allow us to raise funds, and that allows us to provide free assessments and evaluations for people. Now, we do support evaluations and assessment because that allows for a lot of neurodivergent people to have access to the accommodations that they will not have otherwise without the set diagnosis. Here's a radical idea, and I am just going off of tangent here. Why do we need to be in a burnout, or why do we need to kind of be in that suffering situation to be identified as neurodivergent? Why can't when each of us is born, when a baby is born, why can't his neurotype simply be assessed? And it's a different way of human beings being a human. So why can't that support be there since the day a baby is born? So that's the entire concept behind it. But as of right now, what we're doing is we're doing partly three main things. Number one, we're trying to raise funds to be able to offer those evaluations and assessments free of cost. Number two, we are creating resources by hiring more neurodivergent advocates and consultants that allows them to have additional employment opportunities, and it also kind of amplifies their voices. Currently, we have two non-speaking content contributors who are very young, but very, very mightily talented, I might add, on our team. All of our consultants are paid consultants. And so with the little budget that we have, we ensure that they are compensated for the services that are rendered to us, because I don't know if a lot of the audience knows or not, a lot of neurodivergent people cannot work full time. If they do work full time, they're either underpaid or unpaid. And neurodivergent consultants are usually expected to work free of cost or donate their services, which it just blows my mind. Like, you wouldn't do that to any other person. Why would you do that? So we have very strong values, which allow for us to create the system where neurodivergent people are valued, inherently worthy of services, of accommodations, of the same employment opportunities as they are. So I think that's pretty much of what we do in a nutshell. I would like to add here about our Building Safe and Supportive Communities program. And Morenike is a resource developer in that program. And I think that is going to be a game changer for how autism is perceived within the law enforcement. And so I would like Morenike jump in and talk more about that, because she's leading that project.
Absolutely. But I just wanted to give a little bit of a plug if I can, because, nonprofit is a 501c3. So we're a nonprofit. The donations that we receive are, tax deductible, but, we are a small team. Everything that, anything that comes in is utilized directly for the programming that we have. And so we are trying to, again, obtain evaluations for individuals to try to defray the cost. As well as, again, building resources and that are informed by the real experts, the public intellectuals, to those with lived expertise. And then we also are about having accessible education and collaborative programs, and that's something that's really important in here at Kind Theory. And so our Building Safe and Supportive Safe and Supportive Communities initiative is basically to try to increase safety issues. So we're trying to take a proactive approach instead of kind of like what was stated earlier. Why does a person have to be in burnout before they're identified? Why can't it be something that's identified ahead of time? Why should we have to wait until there's some type of escalation or some type of difficulty or problem with law enforcement or some type of authority before we are given the tools to learn how to interact with these authority figures? And why are they not given information that's credible, that's culturally informed, that's neurodiversity affirming, and accurate about us, about the way to communicate and interact with us, and about the double empathy problem. So we're really trying to look at, in terms of like safety teaching and working, trying to find holistic ways to equip people with understanding and tools to work together. So we want this to be something that's mutually beneficial. How can we address, from a neurodiversity informed and trauma informed perspective, how can we address our needs and that of those who, are charged with keeping us safe, so that these things don't escalate into hashtags, into problems, into, how can we give them this knowledge and also learn from one another in a practical standpoint, so that we won't have to fear if one goes non-speaking at a traffic stop or school resource officers or what have you. And so we have a great team of advisors who are sharing their experiences, and we're developing tools that we plan to launch to the community, and they will be free of charge. They will be multimodal tools that will have, so the toolkit will include guidebooks and, like some video resources, case studies, suggestions, a lot of different terminology, and just a lot of things that we hope will really change the game, because some of them, there's well-intended programs out there for law enforcement, but again, they're typically not informed by those with the lived expertise. So they are coming from an external place, and they are, frankly, a lot of them are problematic and stigmatizing.
And we've seen the videos on TikTok. We've seen the videos of young autistic individuals and how law enforcement has handled it. And you think, who in this earth is training these people? Because it's not the people with a lived experience. And I think that comes back to that whole conversation around representation and the importance of having those at the table to give voice. And that's why I think, well, not why I think, why I know I love working with Kind Theory, because it's when I work with clients, they usually say, we want to do this, and here's how we're getting here, and you try to support them, but it's very much, no, we need to do it this corporate way or this business way, and it has to be this certain XYZ. Whereas with Kind Theory, they allow the individual, the contributor, the person working in marketing, the whole team to kind of share their voice and go from there. There's no red tape to say, well, actually, you're wrong, because it's your experience, and that's something I really value. I wanted to talk a little bit more because as we are doing this live today, which is middle of the week, Wednesday, I actually remember my day. This weekend, we are approaching International Day of Persons with Disability. And there's a conversation I know that a lot of different people have is neurodivergence a disability, or is it disabling? So I want to have a conversation with yourselves around that. And rather than throw some more into the frying pan this time, will we come to you, Morenike? Morenike.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was accustomed to us going in the other order. That's okay. So this is something, a topic that I kind of have a lot of ambivalence with, because I'm just going to be honest with you all. There's certain, like, as a neurodivergent person, language is words. They're powerful. They're important to me. So I bristle at the idea of disorder, autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I'm like, I'm not disordered. I mean, I have an entire presentation that I have in training about looking at, trying to look at what we consider chaos and chaos theory and kind of reframing things. But at the same time, I feel differently about the concept of disability. Like, I do feel very personally, deeply that disability is a part of my identity, identify as disabled. And part of that might be because, in addition to being neurodivergent, I have a number of other conditions. So to me, they're just, they're part of who I am. And so I know that some people don't necessarily embrace a disability identity. They say this is a neurotype or this is a part of who I am. But for me, it's both. And for me, there's elements of both ADHD and autism that are very amazing, and there's some things that are difficult to deal with that are
Very
challenging.
difficult. Yep.
And then there's things that are neutral and that are in between, and so I feel that it's a person's choice to identify, however they do, but I don't think that disability should be seen in a shameful manner. And I think so if a person is shying away from identifying as disabled because they have some type of stigma about disability, I would encourage them to look into that. Even if they feel like disability doesn't apply to them per se, I don't think it's anything that one should, be bothered by.
Love that. And Samara, into the frying pan we're throwing you. What is your views on this and what's your thoughts?
So I feel very strongly about this because, when you speak against the word disability, there are a lot of people who are very, who are openly and visually disabled, and they take pride in that because honestly, there is nothing, absolutely nothing to be ashamed of when you're talking about disability. So when you come with this narrative that disability is something negative or disability is something bad, you are kind of associating shame with all those wonderful people out there. I can't accept that. Okay. For me, disability is not a negative word. It is not a shameful word. It is not a taboo. There is no stigma associated with the word. Disability is just a form of human diversity. And I honestly also have a problem with the phrase disability is a different ability, because then you're shying away from the word disability itself. Again, why are you shying away from it? Because we are born in different shapes, different sizes, different colors, and with different strengths and weaknesses. Instead of kind of like, putting disability in a negative bracket, maybe kind of view it as a form of human diversity and practice inclusion and practice language that enforces kindness and compassion. And to be honest, this is where I have a problem with kindness as well, because kindness, I don't want kindness to be a source of sympathy. I don't want it to be that, right? This is not why kind theory was founded. I want the kindness to be empowering. I want it to be uplifting. And so when people talk about disability, in a sense that, oh, I'm autistic, I'm not disabled. I mean, why? Why are you putting people, who are, what exactly do you mean by disability? What is your understanding of disability? That it goes back to that question, right? So for me personally, I would just say that disability is nothing negative. There should be no stigma attached to it. There should be own it. If you have a disability, it is your way of being human. I'm sorry, I'm mixing my words up, but I hope I'm getting the message
We
across.
get you. We get you. And
So that's, yeah.
like I said, and I think that is a fantastic way, because we have 1 more minute, but I think that is a fantastic way to wrap up. Disability, I always say, is part of the human experience. People try to create these sugar-coated, fluffy terminologies, differently abled or special needed or superpowers. And whilst I appreciate some people hold that narrative and it's a part of their journey, I feel that that's inherently ableism, and that is from the systemic ableism the society is built on. And this is why I wish I knew about kind theory when I first got my diagnosis, or even years before I got it, because I feel I would have been in a much more empowered place, or in a much kinder place to myself, because that's the hardest thing as all as a neurodivergent or autistic individual, is trying to find that strength to be kind. But we are at time, so I will say goodbye for me. And do the guests want to say goodbye yourselves, from the founders, some of the founders of Kind Theory?
Everyone, thank you so much for listening to us today. My only request to you to for you will be to visit our website and see if you can support us in any way. There are monetary ways to support. There are also non-monetary ways to support. So reach out to us and ask us how you'd like to be involved.
And I just want to echo that. Please visit us. Our website is kindtheory.org. We're also on social media, other ways. So you can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, all that good stuff. And I just want to encourage you to be open, be conscious, and be kind.
Love that. And our website has been along the bottom there for anybody watching. But from us, we will see you again next month. Have a fantastic International Day of Persons with Disability, and feel empowered and feel kind to yourself. Thanks, everybody.
That's fine.